All right, so at this point, we should be in the home stretch. We should be working on hours 11 and 12. So, hour 11 says the complete 3D describing two different calls to your function. So, just as a reminder, you do have this document here, the written response organizer, where it will help you think about what you want to put in your full written response. So basically, we're going to pick the function that we've been talking about for 3C, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit more in 3D. So we're going to talk about where it's called the first time and where it's called the second time, and then based off of how, or two different calls. It doesn't even have to be necessarily two different spots. It's just going to have two different parameters, more or less. Okay. So if I have call one with a certain parameter and call two with a certain parameter, and then I'm going to talk about conditions that run differently, include the line numbers. So I'm going to say something like, on line number 14, there's an if statement, and if the one parameter will trigger it, the one won't, or something like that. And I'm going to talk about how they're going to respond differently. And then I'm going to say, call one lines that run and result. So what happens when it runs in the result, and call two lines that run and what are the results. Okay. In the full response, it's going to look like this. So describe two calls, procedure identified in the written response for C, which we already talked about. Each call must pass different arguments that cause a different segment of code in the algorithm to execute. So our first call, our second call, and then what happens. So what condition is being tested, and then the results of each call. So an example of that, and I apologize if I don't have this pulled up already. It doesn't look like I do. So if I go to my music app that you guys have seen a couple of times now, when we worked on the libraries project, we also did this. So I'm actually going to pull up that example, which is this one, I think. So this one has the UI, but it doesn't actually do anything. But I can see over here, I could have like two different calls with my parameter. So if I run it for the first time, it's going to show me what position 2 is and then all the information that's associated with it. And this isn't actually selecting a random artist. I kept playing around with this. But if I put another call to this function, and put the number 7 in, for example, I can see that I have two different calls to my function, and then based off of what was in that parameter that was passed down, I'm getting different information. So I just talk about that in those two different responses. Now, like I was saying, it doesn't exactly have to be two separate calls like this. If I had that in an on event, I could also talk about how maybe I'm going to use get text, and then like with my other version, like I could talk about how this call at first, if I put in the number 3 or something, it's going to get the information based off of what's happening in here. And if I put in number 99, it's going to do something else. Okay. So just make sure that you fully explain that. And again, I would always look at those sample annotated examples that they have inside of code.org. All right, so let me know if you have any questions. The last step is just to submit everything. So when we go to do that, remember that this is broken down into the 4 different parts that you need. So we have video of the code that you've made hopefully by now, your survival guide that needs to be completed fully, your written response template, and then the code print. So the code prints pretty easy, basically. You just need to include all of your code as a PDF. I think it's the only one that we didn't talk about directly, but it's pretty easy. They just have like a little tool and it tells you how to use it. So if you have any questions about that, let me know.